area is almost ground zero on this corner, and I'll tell you about what's important. Over there on that corner stood a theater called the Grand Theater. A minute ago, I talked about the Theater Owners and Booking Association. There was a network of theaters all through the country run by them. And over there was the Grand Theater. And sometimes at the Grand Theater, not only did they show movies, they had shows. Mr. Price, you ever play there?
No, at the time,
right.
They weren't holding the shows.
Right, right. Well, they had a few vaudeville shows to come through.
That was earlier.
Right.
Maybe back before.
So yes, vaudeville was here, and that over there was where Bessie danced. She literally worked her act out in the black public performance space. Remember, she had a hell of an audience now because people are walking by, and they can give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down by the number of tips. She was okay. She was she was busted, playing on the streets of Chattanooga. On this corner was the dry cleaners, the Martin Hotel, restaurants, and a number of African-American businesses. From this corner all the way to Central Avenue, in the early 20th century to now, this was the pulse, the heartbeat of the African-American community. It was also an area that was heavily influenced by Booker T. Washington. The basic ideological tone of most blacks in Chattanooga that owned businesses or that were educated, they also tended to follow the philosophies of Booker T. Washington. The other connection is John P. Franklin, that lives now, his father actually helped run the funeral for Booker T. Booker T. Washington spent a lot of time in Chattanooga. In the early 20s, they had the National Negro Business League meeting here. So this was a very vibrant place. Behind you is a very sad story of intra-group prejudice. That church actually died because of color prejudice. It was a black church, but it was a black church only allowing the blue blood, blue vein blacks to come in. And over the years, because they were endogamous, they never grew. And they finally had to give that church to Fisk University. That was a major tower on it, and the population just died. It's a very sad story, but it's a real story that's part of history. In this location was the Martin Hotel. I only got in here when I was a kid. This was one of the very few places that a man like my father, who worked every day, could bring his family for a dinner because everything else was segregated. And I never forget, and I love food, I ate my first fantail shrimp dinner in the restaurant of the Martin Hotel. We had homemade rolls. That was like him. And all the time I'm looking, trying to see where the band gonna come on. What's happening? Who's in here? And as you see, these are some of the people that stayed in this hotel. Fast Domino, the Ink Spots, Cab Calloway, the Platters, Nat King Cole, Lena Horne, a number of people. Now what's up there, what also kept this going was a traditional underground network of black racketeers who were gamblers and numbers bankers who owned baseball teams and who traveled throughout the South, from Chattanooga to Tuskegee to Jackson, Mississippi. And on that money, kids were sent to college, hospital bills were paid, communities were built, and stability was maintained in the neighborhood. And bootleg whiskey. But they policed themselves. So any out-of-bounds behavior was policed inside the community first, and then the police were called. But remember, the police in Chattanooga, the black police officers, could not arrest white folks until the mid-1960s. However, Chattanooga has always had black constables, black firemen, as early as the 1880s. After 1911, when blacks lost the right to vote in Tennessee, things also got bad in Chattanooga. But interestingly, there has always been a harmonious relationship and black participation in the political process. One thing that's unique about Chattanooga as a southern city, there was never a protest or a civil rights movement for the franchise. It was for public accommodations. Voting rights were never suppressed, only from the 20s to maybe the early 50s, and it stopped. There also is a significant but quiet segment of black Republicans then and now in this city. In terms of the music, this begins the street where, and Mr. Price played in a lot of these places. He can tell you more than I can because he actually played here. This is where most of the clubs, barbershops, like I told you, funeral homes began. Here was the first and only legitimate and real 5 and dime store. It was run by the Lowrys, and they were able to sell novelty items like any, but how he actually made his money, and he's kind of a distant relative, I'll tell you. He was the guy that brought the gambling game called the tip book to town. And the reason he could do that is because he ran a novelty business. So when they mailed the tip books from Ohio to Chattanooga, until you broke the seal on the tip book, it was a novelty item. So for years, Mr. Lowry had the franchise, and my uncle was a part of it. So I'm not, full disclosure. This has always been a big gambling town. Always. The numbers have been big here. And that tip book is a unique Chattanooga game. You can play it in very few cities. But once again, that money sent people to college, helped build churches, got people out of jail, bought people food, pushed shoes on children's feet, and food in the stomach of the hungry. The racketeers in those days believed in sharing the wealth, not like the dope boys of today. Imagine, you all, how much money was going into the community then till you got the state lottery. That's the magnitude of the money that was circulating, not only in Chattanooga and black neighborhoods, but all over the country, because our fathers and uncles couldn't do anything else. They couldn't get a job in Miller and Martin. They suddenly were going to work on Wall Street, and they built the National Negro Baseball League out of that, and a lot of these same entertainers were booked by that money. But someone once told me no great fortune in America started out without a great crime. So. That building on the corner is one of the few buildings on 9th Street that we've been able to discover that may have been designed by a black architect, and that filament work you see up there was done by black masons. Another one of my distant relatives, Walter Johnson, used to have a liquor store and buildings there on that corner. I hope they can save it, because that brickwork is very unique, but the building has gone into major disrepair.